So how'd you guys get into the leadership business?
Oh, man. See, this is that one question.
That's that zinger.
It's like, why do you do what you do?
And I guess maybe what is leadership?
So was that supposed to be easier?
I think it's a good place to start.
It is.
Leadership is anybody who has one person they're leading. I mean, we just did a podcast on this. Because when we speak, we're always speaking to the leaderships, and I think that a lot of people think, well, I'm not really a leader. I don't hold that position. I'm not management. I'm not a supervisor. I'm not this. I'm not that. But in actuality, how are you with your peer group? How are you at home? If you're a dad and you're at the bottom of the totem pole at work, you're still a leader. It doesn't change. If you coach youth sports, you're still a leader. So the principles still apply.
I think it's so cool how as a young adult, I had to be my own leader because I was constantly searching for what I thought was leadership. I don't even know if that makes any sense, but it did as a 14-year-old girl that didn't have any mentors.
I think it makes a lot of sense because the term gets thrown around so much, but if you don't have clear examples of, what exemplifies the characteristics, it can be quite confusing.
Yes.
Well, how do you lead yourself?
You're saying me?
Yeah.
Or,
how do you lead yourself?
Well, I was, the last week or so when I was thinking about this discussion, one of the things I realized is, as I look in my life, over the last 36 years, some of the best leaders never even consider themselves leaders.
Right.
And now it's this thing that professionals or people in sports think they need to be. And, oftentimes they're associating leadership characteristics with athletes, with CEOs on TV and with highly polished, people. When in reality, you think about like some of the best examples, it could be a foreman on a job site that showed up on a Saturday to get, something done. And that, that was highly reflective of their leadership ability, even though that's not what they thought they were doing.
Right.
So it's just kind of interesting how it's such an important but misunderstood and potentially overused, concept. So that was my, when I thought about it the last couple of weeks, that's one of the things that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you mentioned sports figures. I mean, sports figures by default are put there.
Yeah.
Because they have a stage. So you are under the microscope.
Yeah.
The minute you get signed, you're under the microscope.
For sure.
Especially one that's maybe a Heisman Trophy winner or whatever, right?
Yep.
You're in the spotlight. So now by default, you're a leader and you're going to be looked up to. And sometimes those people have no leadership skills at all because they've been taken care of.
And they're very young.
Covered for since they were 6 and could first put on the pads and run the field. And people saw talent. So they just kept them comfortable their whole life. And now they're adults with these multi-million-dollar contracts on stage. And so many of them, I mean, honestly,
doesn't always end well.
Go into the news and you can find them all.
Mm-hmm.
So,
your first question was, what is your definition of leadership? And I think, as we were rolling through that sport conversation, for me, the leadership guidance came from being in the military. Not that it was any different than having a coach when I played basketball, because at one point I was actually tall on my team.
I've never been tall.
I know. And then when I became a freshman, it completely changed. I ended up having to be a guard instead of a forward, and that didn't work out for me. I mean, I did enough to turn over the ball a few times, but that just wasn't my jam. But to go into the military, I think that's what I was always looking for and searching for, was what I thought in my mind was a leader. My grandfather was a great leader to me, but he passed away when I was 17 and a half. So I didn't have him to fall back on to ask for mentorship or, how do I navigate this? I trusted the people that outranked me, that had been in longer. And you had mentioned a minute ago about, a contractor showing up on a Saturday when they didn't need to. A lot of times that's what it came down to, was that piece of somebody showing up, or nobody's watching me, but am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing no matter what?
Integrity, right?
At what cost?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's one of our core values in the Marine Corps, is integrity. So, that was a great example for me, although I was still always searching.
And how long were you in the Marine Corps?
5 years.
5 years.
Yep.
And within the context of leadership, if you kind of had to maybe break down a milestone that you learned each year, like what are some of the major milestones over that period of time?
For me personally, oh boy. How about learning my own boundaries?
Yeah.
I think I got myself in trouble more than I should have, trying to stand my ground, trying to show my way of leading, probably being more opinionated than I should have been, because I grew up really fast. I grew up without a lot of mentorship, period. It was very volatile. I never went to the same school twice. I was bullied badly when I started going to a downtown school. I had to ride the city bus, which we all know what that experience is like, especially when you live in an area where there's heavy gang activity. And that's where I was introduced to the Marine Corps. I had friends that were across the street at the University of Arizona that saw me in trouble. They didn't know me, but they were all in the military. They were all Marines. They were in the reserves. And they were all close to my age, because I was 14 going on 19. So I could, because I had to survive in those areas. And so that was like my first taste of what leadership looked like. They didn't have to know me, but they fought for me. And so that to me was that leadership piece. But yeah, there was a lot of time in the military. My first year was like learning how to walk.
Yeah.
I didn't know where my boundaries were, how far I could push, because I graduated number 1 in boot camp. I was number 1. I had the best scores. I wore the best uniform. I was number 1. And then I got to my duty station and I was nothing. I had to start all over again. But I still had that attitude of like, didn't you see my record? Like, don't you know who I am? When really doesn't mean anything. It's how you walk it out, knowing your position, just like sports, knowing where you're at in that space. And I didn't for a long time.
So when you had to unlearn some of that mentality, was that through leaders around you that identified that and said, hey, we got to work on it? Was it just self-awareness, or was it a combination of both? Because I think there are a lot of people, a lot of competitive, successful people that once they get into something that's new and maybe they're not immediately successful, it's kind of a combination of having people that can help guide them, but also a self-awareness to know that, hey, there's things to work on. But what did that look like for you?
I think it was when I just kind of ended up being on an island. Like I just had a lot of people not wanting to be around me. I had at 19, here's some vulnerability for you. At 19, I had already gotten married and was expecting my first child. And I think where it all changed for me was when I lost that child at 5 months. And I was 19. And then I realized, like, I'm in control, and it's only up to me if I want to change how the rest of my career goes. Because love it or not, you are in it. You signed a contract. And so what are you going to do with it? And so it was really me looking at myself and going, okay, how can I be better? Because a few months ago, I was on top of the world. And then I let other people start to get into my head and dictate how I was going to behave. And in that moment of losing a baby, losing a marriage, so young, I don't know where that came from. But the ability to look at myself, and I had to do it again when I ended up homeless with a child 18 plus years later. Because I've failed this and, another failed marriage, and like, okay, now it's an even deeper evaluation of what is going on.
Sure.
And ultimately, here we are, fast forward, even after that 13 years, 14 years now later, we own a company that is going in and helping people to own that reality faster. For us, it's about getting there faster, because I spent and wasted so much time trying to figure it out through other people what was going on with me. when if I just had the tools, or if somebody was just honest with me, instead of, trying to say that it was okay, that I'd been through bad things, that, these things happen, or having leaders in the world that aren't being truthful with what they're going through and making me feel like I'm special and that maybe I need to keep this behind a closed door. Like that's what we're about, is let's talk about it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, seems like you've gone through quite a few life boot camps.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
At an early age. And then, again, a few years later. And I guess when you guys are working with people, do you see that, unsuccessful people, and I know that means a lot of different things, or successful people need more help? Because successful people that are still trying to get to the next level, there's probably maybe an air of confidence at times where they're not aware of some of the things that are happening around them, blind spots or other things. But obviously, people that have been down on their luck, or they think that they're not as successful as they could be, obviously they need help as well. But how do you see those dynamics for each situation?
I love the word, by the way.
Yeah.
So thanks for using the word.
Oh, dynamics.
Love that. So the key to all of that is everybody already has all the answers inside them. And it really depends on how deep and how far back we have to go to help them discover what they already know. It's this belief system that we're programmed with from before we're even born.
Yeah.
That starts with us.
It's generational,
and then,
right?
Yeah. And then as it depends on how that grows, it depends on what the environment is, it depends on all this input that you're getting from 0 till 12. Because that's the life we live today.
Yep.
So that really all depends. And then when people are more self-aware, they're like mediocre success, medium. Those people generally have some self-awareness. And then you get the people that might have a little bit more ego than success. And then they don't think they need the help. I was there at one point. God, when I was thrown into leadership, I didn't know what I was doing. And I screwed it up bad. Because I didn't have any good leaders up until that point. And I didn't really start growing until I was 18 years old, when I sobered up and cleaned up. Because prior to that, from 12 until then, I was on drugs and alcohol. I wasn't living a life. And until I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when I went out and I sought out the information. So, it really all depends on how bad you want to grow.
So seeking the information, what did it look like at that point in time? Because seeking information now is a different...
Oh, it's way easier now.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't have Google to go to back then. It was books.
Yep.
I read the John C. Maxwell,
oh, nice.
the Tony Robbins.
Yep.
And I fell in love with Tony Robbins and everything that he brought. And he saved my life, and he didn't even know it.
Yep.
But so many of the principles and so many of the teachings that he had, the Jim Rohns of the world, that's really where all of that began. And then I really started getting healthier at a different level than what I was getting through other programs I was going through to stay sober and clean. And I wanted more, and I wanted more, and I wanted more, because I was almost getting addicted to the feeling of feeling healthy and not so messed up. So that's really where all of that started. And when I was in my mid-20s, I always said, I'm going to be like Tony. I'm going to do what he does. I want to coach people like that. And that's where my leadership shifted too. That's when I became an actual leader, not just a manager of people telling them what to do, because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And how many leaders out there do that today?
Yeah, I Googled leadership quotes,
Oh boy.
which, there's about, a trillion results when you search that. But that's a very common distinction, is leadership versus management.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So as you bring that up, what are some of the characteristics of each?
So a manager is really the paperwork. It's the day-to-day operations. That's really what the category for manager is for me.
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking leader, you're talking human capital. You're talking about a responsibility, a moral responsibility to the people that you are leading, because how you treat them and how you help them grow and become the best person that they can be at work is so important, because they're going home. And how they are at home is based on how you treated them all day long. So as leaders, we may not even realize that we're affecting another generation, if not another generation beyond that, based on how we're treating the people that are in front of us on a daily basis. Because I promise you, they spend more time with you than they do at home with their spouse or their kids. But yet you affect that entire family dynamic. And if you don't understand that and you can't get responsible for that, then you're affecting the people that are going to be taking care of you.
So people need to be leaders and managers at the same time.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is when you said that, because you have to operate. Everybody has some form of paperwork, some form of executing what's already known. At the same time, it's not a one or the other situation.
No, you have to be able to hybrid them.
Yep.
Oh, the mic keeps moving away from me. It's like she doesn't need to talk. So it's funny. This is why we coach together. So let's just clarify that.
Sure.
This is why we coach together. It's Kim and Fritz. We are Rewired Dynamics, because we hear different things. We process differently. We are, male and female that are not romantically involved. We have our own spouses. We have different personalities. We have different pasts. And so when we coach together, we hear different things. There are different questions we can pull out. So when you said, this is exciting, because I think I knew where you were going to go with that, but management versus leadership, we talk a lot about being proactive or reactive. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I guess you do have to be one and the same at some points in your life between management and leadership. But managers, to me, seem to be more reactive. And a true leader within a company, to me, feels more proactive. That leaders are always looking to be truly innovative, to really think about their people most. That is, to me, a healthy leader. A leader that sits behind a desk and wants to manage everything that's going on. That's where that, reactive personality comes out, when it's about me. Mm-hmm. How am I going to be protected? Instead of, okay, I'm solid. Let's take care of the people, because without the people, we have nothing. So if your ecosystem is not in check and your culture is not in alignment, your entire company is going to suffer, from the janitor to yourself. So you had asked earlier about healthy leadership, and how do we come to that, and how do you talk to somebody who's been hyper successful? Well, we're hyper successful, but we're still seeking out good coaches for us, because that is not a thing that
stay
you
humble
all
and never
of a
stop
sudden,
learning. Right?
Yes, you don't all of a sudden get there.
Key.
Yep.
You have breakthroughs, but you're never always there.
Mm-mm.
So that's my definition between management and leadership.
No, it makes a ton of sense. One of the things that I keep using this word dynamics.
Oh, that's
great.
Okay,
I love it.
We love that word.
One of the dynamics that I see is timelines that are out of sync. Now, I'll kind of explain that. But if you're saying that a leader needs to think about the future, always be living in the future, I like to think about it as reverse engineering the future. Like have a vision for what needs to happen, and then reverse engineer that into the present, and then adjust as new information comes up. But one of the challenges with that is people live in different timelines. Yep. So certain people within an organization, they're basically thinking the next 10 minutes, next hour, the next day, the month, quarter, year. If somebody's truly a leader, part of it is thinking into the future, but also being able to speak the language of these different timelines. Because I know there have been situations where I'm trying to describe something that is likely going to happen 3 years from now, and people assume that's going to be implemented in the next 3 days. Yep. And that's just where I think the awareness of you really toggling back and forth between leadership and management and these different timelines. That's one of the big challenges that I see.
That's awesome.
That's communication code.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you're speaking timelines, in my brain I'm going personalities. If you don't know your team and how each member of that team operates, because if you're speaking to somebody who's very present-minded and doesn't have the capacity to be future-oriented, there's going to be a serious disconnect there. So
you're
you have to
describing
speak
different
that
worlds,
language.
essentially.
Yeah, you really are.
But
Yeah.
there is a way to speak that language to still accomplish that.
Yep.
But then you're speaking my language because I'm so futuristic that when I reverse engineer, I might wind up 20 years ahead. You know, I struggle with that 20 to now.
Yeah.
But I always struggle with learning and being able to speak what I mean first.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so out there.
Yeah.
That people are like, what are you talking about? I don't.
Yeah.
How are we going to do this?
Yeah. So you're asking me to get through the day at the same time you're asking me to understand what you're describing 5 years from now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it really boils down to understanding that team, and then the team understanding you as a leader and allowing them to do some support and some challenge and say, well, how are we going to do this, and what timeline are you talking, and start asking you the questions, right? Because
and then the other dynamic too is based on the size of the company, you may not be specialized enough from a personality and skill set standpoint to have people that can only think about the future, only think about the present. Like when you're, as we've grown, you can, like early on, you really need people that can float back and forth between all of these things. But then over time, you can start to see there's more people that, think a certain way, and being aware of that is more and more necessary. Where in the beginning, it would have just been much more clear that the team was out of sync because people weren't able to be fluid.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of frustration comes in that.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when you're starting a company, it's a great idea to have people like Fritz and I in the room or starting the company.
Sure.
But we also know that we cannot do it without those present-minded, without the people that are fighting truly for the care of people and processes. So we need people in the back that are very analytical, that want to help design, that don't want the spotlight. We must have those people in order to create that alignment. And when you understand how each other comes to the table, that becomes really fun, because then you know when you need to not talk because the quietest person in the room is about to drop a bomb that's totally going to change how you go out into the market. Mm-hmm. So you can have those 6 people in the room, and you can put the innovators way out in right field and let them run as they keep bringing intel back to those people that are putting the processes together. And then you can scale it back. Then you can move people around, but having that alignment, having that equality throughout the team, and being able to speak to how we show up at work, it's very different. Our personalities can be different. The way that we speak are different, and our work is different, but we're always the same person. So how do we get that in line? Because we hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really good at leaving work at work and going home and being a different person. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that piece. Mm-hmm. You should not be a different person at work than you are at home.
Yeah, because now you're living 2 different lives.
Yeah.
And that's an issue. And, we knew we were going to come into these questions like this when we were speaking to companies. So we actually went out and we sought out software and tools that would help us break down people's personalities, understand who they are at the core.
Myers-Briggs?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. We have what's called the 5 voices, which is a much simpler process, simplicity. But it really breaks it down, so it's really cool for us because we can help leaders understand their team at a different level, and that's when we talk about the alignment. That's really what we're talking about, is getting that communication code down.
So what are the 5 voices?
Oh, that's another podcast. 'Cause that's a lot of depth. But, you have the creative, you have the pioneer, you have the connector, you have the nurturer, and you have the guardian. And then you have all 5 of those voices in you. It's just, what are the prominent ones? There might be 1 or 2 that are prominent that drive your life. So like for myself, I'm a creative pioneer. So within that system, I am only 9% of the population.
So if you were a guardian who is, 50% of the population, If he's telling you something in the
You guys
future,
we're not going to be on the same
you
page.
you've already left the room.
Yeah.
You might be sitting here, but
Yeah.
you're totally checked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because it seems like a lot of this stuff is generally reserved for medium to large companies. And it's not a good thing, but it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like at a certain point, you can address leadership issues within an organization, when in reality, there's probably things much earlier in the small business process where these things need to be implemented.
Absolutely.
But when you're small, it's like get revenue on the books, get products built, design products, operate the business, focus on the customer. And those things are certainly kind of the fundamentals. You can't have a business unless you sell something, or unless you bring revenue in and ship product out, or if it's a service-based business, you execute on that. But it's interesting. Are you guys targeting smaller companies to try and provide this? Luxury is the wrong term, but provide this type of service?
So great that you would ask it like that. Thank you for teeing that up.
Mm-hmm.
Sport reference. Yes, I love to golf. Is every single entrepreneur, whether it's one person, whether it's the high school student with a dream,
Yeah.
every single one of us must have this.
Sure.
There is no hierarchy of leadership. We just talked about that.
Parenting.
Full circle.
Yeah.
But if you are a college student and you're looking to start your own company, awesome. Okay. You should know your own personality so that you can go out and actually have these really good conversations and get there faster and in a healthy way. Because when you start bringing people on, that is not the time for you to figure out, I'm a guardian and my futuristic thinkers are like, stop asking us so many questions because we haven't done anything yet. Because that's what a guardian will do, because they're out to guard. So they become the interrogators of, why are we doing this? Where's our money coming from? Where's this? And that's exhausting for somebody who is future thinking. So how are you going to even talk at the foundational level, even as a brand new entrepreneur? Then it gets a lot more in depth when you start going up the chain and you become that CEO that's reached the top. Well, how did you get to the top? You didn't get there alone. There's no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
So these people that say that they're independent, that is not true. You could not be where you are without, influencing
Absolutely.
at some point or another. And we're also totally out of the era of, leading people by, this is my title.
Yeah.
It is about influence because of what you had mentioned earlier with online presence and trying to sell a product. I can be the president and clearly it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be political or anything, but there's no influence there
Yeah.
because you haven't walked it. You've not been transparent with me. You can't be empathetic. You're not authentic. So I'm not buying it. It's a totally different world now, and COVID completely slingshotted us into a place that we were going. It just did it violently, and we are thankful that it happened because it even had us shift immediately. 2 months into business, we went virtual.
Yeah.
It's not where we love to play, love to be in front of people for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
We this is who we are. But if we must play in this virtual world, there are steps to being in front of us, being in front of our coaches. Is this, interview and application process, because we want to know who you are. We want to be able to serve you at your highest level. Let us fight for you and with you. This isn't about, me coming in to sell you something. You already have the answer. Fritz already said that. But let's dig in a little bit deeper because there's still a planned lie inside of you that you call an excuse that's going to keep you from where you want to go.
It's a lot of psychology.
Oh,
is.
yes. Oh,
Absolutely.
yes.
So common.
Basic psychology.
Yeah, it's basic psychology.
If there is such a thing.
No, that's great. A couple of the quotes that I came across, and I'm kind of a sucker for a good quote. So I
love dissecting them. So go ahead.
I do apologize for that. Becca, what are you laughing about? So kind of on that, that what you just said there is, Vince Lombardi said leaders aren't born, they're made, and they are made just like anything else through hard work.
And what else did he say?
And that is the price we'll have to achieve the goal. And that's the price we'll have to pay to achieve that goal or any goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like, it's hard to think your way into leadership like it's like you have to be presented with very hard challenges, and that's kind of what forces you to be innovative. It forces you to think outside the box. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, it's
I
kind
agree
of
with that,
you
but
rise to the occasion when
you do,
when
but
needed.
you have to go back to the core,
Yeah.
right? You got to have the basics. So in another one of his quotes, he stood up in front of his team and he said, "This is a football." And they mastered tackling,
Yeah.
running, passing, and blocking. The 4 fundamentals of football. Right? So they mastered those. So what are the fundamentals you as a person need to master to be the ultimate leader? Because it does take hard work. But if you're missing one of the basics, you're not going to get there. And that's really what we do, is we come in and we help identify the basics to help you build a strong foundation and then fight so that you can put that work in, so that you can be made a great leader. Because no, they're not born. Absolutely not. You know, I don't think talent is born either.
Yeah.
That's something you have to work on, and that's been proven in the talent code, the book. So does that answer that question?
Yeah, for sure. So Steve Jobs said, if you want to be liked by everybody, sell ice cream. Don't be a leader. How do you guys balance the fact that you're gonna upset some people if you take a stand?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting how people will recoil when you confront them with the truth.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, we are so conditioned. We are in such a zombie state as a nation. We are so connected, we're disconnected. That we think we already have the answers. And we're very skeptical of anybody coming at us that would think otherwise.
Because you can find, it's confirmation bias. You can go online and find evidence for your stance wherever you want to look, wherever you want to look for it.
Absolutely.
But what are you hiding behind?
That's exactly.
What is it exactly? So when he talked about the core, the root,
Yeah.
there's a root to everything. There's a root to every word. That's why we have definitions with our worksheets. Because we're not just throwing things against the wall and seeing if they work for you. When we go to teaching and we go to cultivating people, we really want to make sure that we're doing it right. It's not just Fritz and I at the table. It is, and we are certainly not going to be liked by everybody. And if we get hate mail, we get excited because we know we're doing something right and we're pushing buttons in people that have an opinion, and usually those are the ones that we need to speak to. But they'll never know that we come in love, that we come to fight for you, because they don't give it an opportunity because they're afraid. And there's a whole nother piece to that. And it's unfortunate because we've been conditioned to believe that everybody else around us that we trust, our circle of influence, has our best interest in mind, and that's not true. Because if they've never pushed outside of that, if they've never gone out to be active leaders and active listeners instead of waiting to respond, which is what we're really good at as a society, we never listen to anybody anymore. We don't even know the question because we've got an answer. This is where the communication gets broken down so far that now you're in a power position and I'm just going to listen to you. So yeah, you can sell ice cream if you want. Everybody's going to love you. It's okay to be likable. But you don't need to like me.
Yeah.
I'm not addicted to that. I used to be.
Yep.
Because I didn't have friends. I was always a lone wolf. So for you to want to be my friend was really important to me. But when you realize that the 5 people you hang around with, how often have we heard this?
Become the average of the
Yes.
5 people, yeah.
And when you really know that, and you see it, you start being real selective about who you share your vision with. Pay attention the next time you share something. The listening audience, pay attention the next time you say something that's a dream on your heart to somebody who doesn't know how to dream anymore.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, oh, that's a ridiculous idea. Isn't that already existing? Doesn't somebody already do that?
There's a lot of unqualified opinions out there.
Yeah, and people's opinions of you are none of your business.
So how do you stay open-minded to all of that without being I guess for lack of a better word, paranoid about, I guess, all the people you surround yourself with all the time. Could be family, could be friends, could be coworkers. I mean, there's obviously an evaluation process that you're suggesting you go through continually. But, how do you balance that evaluation process with also trusting people to some extent?
Well, I think for me, it's making sure that the ego never comes out. It always stays in a box, because there's no place for ego, ever. Really, I haven't been able to find one reason why that should come out.
Mm-hmm.
And the second piece of that is just to remain humble.
Yep.
And as long as I can do those two things personally, then it helps me stay open-minded, and it also helps that process of, I like you, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with it. And if you're gonna challenge me, then please bring me the proof.
Yeah.
Because there's so much talk out there.
But if you're always in this, because there's opportunities to disagree with people constantly.
Of course.
So I just, from a business standpoint, from a, productivity standpoint, and, in my mind, it's alignment on the customer, alignment on the product. You talk about fundamentals, in Vince Lombardi, what is a football? It's like, what is a business? A business has a customer base. They have a product or a service. You need, revenue is the lifeblood. You got to have revenue flow in, and you have to have product or service flow out. So, you would like to think that the majority of people's time is spent on that. And then if there are disputes, it really probably comes down to the frequency of the disputes. If people are disagreeing all the time, you can't ever get anything done.
Well, that's support challenge, right? I mean, we have a tool called the support challenge matrix, and that's exactly where that falls in. Because there's healthy support, there's healthy challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get in front of a group of people and go, let's challenge one another.
Start
so
the
how
conversation
can you
like
do
that.
high challenge? And they're like, wow, because what do you naturally think of when you think of challenge?
Like in a work context?
Yes.
Man, or does it start, or does it stop? It depends what kind of challenge it is. Is it a personnel challenge? Is it a product challenge? Is it a manufacturing challenge? Is it an engineering challenge? It really depends on the category of the challenge. But there's
where does our brain go though? Right to the negative?
Yeah.
Right to the fight?
Depends on the responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, you have certain, an engineer, in some respects, their job is to think about the negative. Like if you're going to ship a $200,000 lighting package to the Caribbean, you got to think about what can go wrong. Is there dirty power on site? What does the export process look like? So I think it is definitely, there are people that have to focus on that. And it's just part of the job. But at the same time, it's also making sure that's balanced with, with a lot of positive. So I think it really depends on the role and the person.
Yeah. So high challenge is, let's have a really hard conversation and I'm going to support you through it.
Okay.
That's high challenge. But going into it, people are like, whoa, low challenge is going to be bad. High challenge is going to be scary. It could be if you didn't have a liberating leader amongst your ranks.
Yep.
So back to the, being empathetic, being super humble. We all go through struggle. You mentioned earlier about, what if somebody comes at us and they don't agree with what we're doing? Okay. We've had our own partners come at us and say, that's not going to work. Okay. That's where you're at in your career.
Yep.
Not to say that we didn't in the moment take offense, but we got really curious about what are we missing? And that is being a healthy leader.
Yep. And I was just going to ask, how do you guys stay humble and open-minded? And it's, you just address
we
that.
Lots of
whiteboard.
debriefing
Yeah.
too.
We whiteboard
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we go through the uncomfortable conversations of that didn't work or that did or how do we get a different response from somebody and have them go even deeper so that they can have a breakthrough faster. Because it's not about keeping somebody in front of us for years. It's not about that. We want to be an advisor, an advocate for you. We want to help, wherever your culture goes, we would love to be there to support you. But to have you as an active client forever and not get you a breakthrough, we shouldn't be in this position. And no coach should be. And there's a lot of really good coaches out there. But what we're finding is that, I'm going to get in trouble. what we're finding is that they're really good marketers, and they're playing on people's emotions.
Sure.
They're playing to get them to spend money where they damn well know that they shouldn't be tapping into because they don't have the skills to do it.
Yep.
And so be mindful, do your research, have a conversation. You know, the first talk that we have with people, there's no cost to that. We want to know where you're at. This isn't about you coming on and I'm going to sell you something. I want to have a conversation with you, and we'll see what kind of partnership we can have. It's not one-sided. We are here to fight for people. And we're seeing that a lot more with young entrepreneurs. These kids that are, you know, I'm getting interviewed a lot from high school kids that want to go into business. And we started thinking about, like, how do we help them? How do we get the community involvement? Like for you, Will is all about community involvement, getting more entrepreneurs on a stage to be able to talk about what they do. For us, we've recently put together a sponsorship program for companies within our own community that can sponsor a student or a veteran to go through this training with us so that they're not worried about what you just said. When you're starting a company, what do you have to worry about right off the bat? How am I going to pay for this?
The football, right?
Yes. Yeah. How am I going to pay for this?
Yep.
Well, those kids are our future. And if we're not teaching them to be innovative, to be humble leaders, they're not getting it in high school. I'm so sorry for my educators, because educators go to college because they love giving to their students, but they're put in a box that you must check this box in order for that student to be successful.
I agree.
And they're doing them a disservice. So we're hoping that the sponsorship piece will help companies reinvest into the students that are here because they want them to stay. They want them to go into manufacturing or whatever else might be in the community. And you have people getting out of the military for the second time, coming back to the community and going, who's going to invest in me because I really feel like this is something that needs to be built? And so we help them through that process.
And just to speak a little bit more about that, it's not that we're coming in and doing like a program with them, right? We're coaching for 12 months. If they want to call us every day, they call us every day. Mm-hmm. We are going to literally fight for them so that they can be the best entrepreneur and have the greatest opportunity of success that they can have, because most entrepreneurs, 78% of them, it's a very lonely place. 74% of them suffer mental illness at some point in that process. Well, we don't want that. Mm-hmm. So we want to be there holding their hand, guiding them, helping them go through some of the stuff we've went through over the last 2 years. It hasn't been easy. I quit this business 1,000 times in the last 2 years. Threw up my hands and was like, I'm done. This is hard.
It's really hard.
And it's hard until it's just not hard anymore. Mm-hmm.
But you got to keep going.
If you're going through hell, keep going, right?
Yeah.
or if you get to that end point, is maybe this just isn't where I want, because you don't even know your personality. You've never asked a young entrepreneur, who are you and how do you show up for work? What do you really want to do? Because everybody's guided them up to this point and directed them in what they thought they should be doing. And that all goes back to a belief system. So you talked about psychology earlier. Yeah, we have no idea making on people around us just by the few words that we say every day consistently. So we're hoping that even after the end of that year, if they don't want to be a creator of something, they will know how to support the creator of something and be the best they can be for that team.
No, that's great. And I hope that, within this area, because this area is so strong in the engineering, the manufacturing side of things, and construction, and building, I hope that, I hope more people get excited and passionate about those types of businesses and industries, because, a lot of people, when they think about starting a business, or if somebody's young, it's okay, it's kind of get into the tech space or build an application, or they end up getting into very, very competitive spaces. Whereas if you're in manufacturing, there's been such an exit from manufacturing in the last 30 or 40 years, but this area is very, very strong in it. So I'm hoping a lot of those young entrepreneurs get involved, get excited. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get excited about manufacturing. Manufacturing facilities, oftentimes they're dirty. Yeah. It's a lot of routine and repetition, and we we very much try and change that here. Like, if doesn't matter if you're building a light fixture on the floor or welding a light pole, or on the sales side, the marketing side, the engineering side, trying to get people excited about, what's going on the manufacturing side, because I think there's a real need there. And I don't know. Yeah, if you guys ever talking to somebody and they want some perspective on that, if they're interested in manufacturing, I think it would be very good to tip the scales in the manufacturing direction for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things I wanted to end on is if you guys think the issue of specialization, like within the economy, has created issues with people being too isolated or secluded from other types of positions. And what I mean by that is, I think appreciation and empathy and like understanding the different challenges that people have, regardless of where they are in an organization. It's like, as the organization becomes more structured and compartmentalized, people stop, they start to lose appreciation for what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think back to the manufacturing side, most people have never even stepped foot in a manufacturing facility. Right. It's like in grade school, high school, maybe if you're in shop class, or if you're on that track, if you're going to tech school, maybe you get to go to a manufacturing facility. But the vast majority of the population, I don't think has. And I think that there's a lot of empathy and appreciation that's lost by people in manufacturing and engineering being so far removed from like the general population. I think that creates problems. People don't appreciate what people are going through.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that, just the compartmentalization in general of skill sets and roles?
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lack of that kind of skill set going on right now.
Yeah,
for sure. And I really wish that schools would do more promotion of that 2-year education over 4-year education.
Yeah. Yep.
To go get those hard skills. And as you were talking, I'm sitting there going, all these people that are disconnected.
Yeah.
All they have to do is walk around and look, because everything that they have is because of manufacturing.
I know.
Everything.
Yeah.
There isn't a thing that they're going to do.
Yeah. You're absolutely
right. They're not
right.
coming within something that was manufactured within 2 seconds of grabbing it.
And I think it's, why, and when I look at something, I think, okay, how was that made? Was it a casting process, an injection molding process? Is there a microcontroller inside of it? Like, trying to understand the way it works. But I didn't think about that. I didn't always think that way. Mm-hmm. So people can start to shift that direction, but there has to be an emphasis, I think, in society, and it has to be cool. Like, it has to be, and I think it was, 40, 50 years ago, but now it's just, there's this void of interest. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Just look around at the world around us. Somebody had to make it or assemble
at a table with a lot of manufactured
the motorcycle back
right.
there.
Yeah, the drum set, everything that you're looking at.
Yeah.
But again, it all goes back to conditioning.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we have created the easy button.
Yes.
So we're a product of our own environment.
True.
So it's not going in and, I'm going to go to that school and I'm going to revolutionize the way that people look at manufacturing. That is a much bigger deal. Really, if that's the case, we're looking to just get them involved, get them curious about, have them come in and make a product.
For sure.
Then you get the brain working in a different way. You start building different neurological pathways. You start getting them outside of looking into a box and hoping one day they can be like that.
Yep.
People have lost the art of working hard. There's a faster way to get there.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to have these kids thinking is that you have to live for somebody else's opinion. And that's what's happening a lot with a lot of careers for young children right now is that like button. You're not going to be an Instagram superstar. Yeah. And even if you are, you're still going to need us because there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that nobody's looking at.
For sure.
And that you're not showing.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. The world is there's a tangible world that exists that's more real than what you see on the glowing rectangle in front of your face.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And usually there's not a big like button sitting above that business that you go and tap.
Yep.
Ooh.
Maybe they should put that on.
No, we're not. No.
Maybe like the table. Actually, that will happen. There's no question that'll happen. That's actually
Have
a really
like a
good idea.
You know how Staples had the, that was easy, right?
Actually,
I have one at the coffee
I had a
house.
service writer that had that, and if something went easy, that was easy.
If that doesn't exist already, it's very close. You'd be able to walk into a hotel lobby and look at the furniture and have a upvote or downvote, and that data will be sent back to the manufacturer.
There's probably your technology already being produced.
Well, you said it already, so the universe is going to make it happen now. So you might want to put your name on that. So like,
there's plenty of lights to build yet. So.
you could build the light in the thing that goes bing.
There you
There
It's
you
true.
go. There you go.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. Anything else you guys want to run through?
No, I think we should have an episode 2 on something else
Yes.
because like this feels like we just scratched the surface of some really fun conversation now that you have a good foundation.
Sure.
Did we answer your questions?
Yeah, I think so. I had a lot of notes, but it's nice once the conversation got going to close the computer and just talk. But yeah, I think it's a really important topic. As we have grown from a few people to we've got about 60 people now. The dynamics change so much.
Yeah.
And like every 5 people that are added, you just it changes dynamics, that word again. But and I'm sure that doesn't stop.
No.
And it's these principles I think do become more important over time because people within an organization are a little bit more disconnected than they were when it was a group of 5 people. So
Absolutely.
But yeah, for sure. And yeah, if you guys, again, as you guys are talking to, young people in the area, if there's anything we can do to help, we do try and be a resource for the community. Whether it's, in Lakeside Park, giving away lighting for sports fields or our charity every year to raise money for the tech or, getting involved with Envision or YPF, anything that, we can do to help, we're definitely here for it.
Awesome.
That sounds great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
appreciate it.
Well,
Nice meeting
It
you.
was
very much.
awesome.
All right.